This is Andrew Huberman, a neuroscientist from Stanford, who is the internet's go-to expert in providing real quality productive advice backed up by science. In this video, I'm going to reveal the popular and scientifically grounded system that Andrew Huberman talks about for successfully building habits easily. Habits are things ingrained within our nervous system, often learned unconsciously. Occasionally, we adopt habits without even being fully aware until they become a problem or when they prove to be beneficial. Now, we need to understand that there are two types of habits. One is called immediate goal-based habit and the other is called identity-based habit. Goal-based habits are designed to bring you a specific outcome as you do them. So, each and every time you do them. For example, let's say you're somebody who wants to get more cardio exercises done in a week. That would be an immediate goal-based habit. If your goal is to get that cardio maybe 4 times a week, every time you do it, you check off a little box and you say, okay, I did it, you met the goal. Now, this is different from identity-based habits where you start to attach some sort of larger picture about yourself. So instead, doing some cardio per week, you try to adopt an identity like being a fit person or an athlete. So to change your behavior for good, you need to start believing in new things about yourself. Changing your beliefs is not as difficult a task as it may seem initially. The process can be broken down into 2 steps. Number 1, determine what kind of person you aspire to be. Number 2, prove it to yourself by doing small, easy to do wins. Here are a few examples of how you can make this work in real life. Want to be strong? Identity. Become the type of person who never misses a workout. Small win. Do push-ups every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Want to be a better friend? Identity. Become the type of person who always stays in touch. Small win. Call one friend every Saturday. If you repeat the same people every 3 months, you'll stay close with 12 old friends throughout the year. Want to become a better writer? Identity. Become the type of person who writes 1,000 words every day. Small win. Write 1 paragraph each day this week. Now, a question arises. How long does it take to form a habit? Does it depend on the habit or a person? Some say 21 days. Others say 30 or 60. Which is correct? Well, there's a study published in 2010 by author Lally that concluded that for a particular habit to be formed, it takes around 18 days to as many as 254 days for different individuals. How do you know if you formed a habit? Well, it means reaching a point where it doesn't take much mental effort in order to do that particular habit. Now, if you can't form one habit easily, it doesn't mean that you can't form other habits easily. There's a term called limbic friction, which was coined by Andrew Huberman, and this term is used to describe how much activation energy you need in order to engage in a particular behavior. For example, you want to develop the habit of walking after dinner. Now, what dictates whether you go and do the habit is a friction which comes from one of 2 sources. It could be because you're too tired to do it, or it could be because you're too anxious and distracted in order to do it. In the research paper Psychology of Habit by Wood and Runger, they talk about the various ways that habits form in the nervous system, and they mention that with each repetition of a habit, small changes occur in the cognitive neural mechanisms associated with procedural memory. Now, what is procedural memory? It is holding in mind the specific sequence of things that need to happen in order for a particular outcome to occur. So, in the experiment that they performed, it was revealed when trying to form a new habit. Getting into the mindset of procedural memory is very useful for overcoming the limbic friction barrier. But the question is, how does one do that? By performing a simple visualization exercise wherein you think about the very specific sequence of steps that are required to execute that habit. For example, let's say you want to get into the habit of making an espresso for your family every morning. You picture yourself walking into the kitchen, switching on the espresso machine and pouring out the rich, aromatic brew. Take a moment to visualize each of these steps clearly from beginning to the end. It turns out that doing this simple mental exercise once can make people much more likely to do that habit regularly, not just the first time, but as they continue out into the days and weeks that follow. This is a simple and a powerful tool you can use. What phases of the day, not times, you do a particular habit is important because the particular phases of a day are linked with certain chemical and neural circuits. And when you do a particular habit in a particular phase of the day, it will increase the likelihood that you will be able to maintain these habits and activities for an extended period of time. Here are the phases. The first phase is 0 to 8 hours after waking up, wherein the entire system is focused and action-oriented. Furthermore, it is well known that being in an action and focused-oriented state increases your likelihood of overcoming any limbic friction that prevents you from carrying out specific habits. This kind of solidifies what we always heard, wherein the morning is kind of sacred and used to conquer the hardest of things. So, as you make a list or consider the different habits you would like to develop, identify the ones that you will know will cause the most limbic friction, that will be the hardest for you to engage in, and will require the most activation energy. Place those in the 0 to 8 hours after waking. By placing those habits in this broader window of 0 to 8 hours, you're making it such that your nervous system will predict when you're going to lean in against the limbic friction in order to perform particular types of habits. Now, there are other phases of the day, and those turn out to be useful for acquiring other types of habits. Phase 2 begins when dopamine and cortisol levels naturally begin to decline 9 to 14 hours after waking up. The second half of the day is when serotonin levels are most likely to be the highest and tend to promote relaxation. So, how do you leverage phase 2 of the day for habit formation? It is highly recommended that you adopt habits and activities that you already do that involve less limbic friction during the second half of the day. It could be journaling, learning a language, or practicing music, something that's a little bit challenging but doesn't require a ton of energy in order to override that limbic friction. Phase 3 is essentially getting the body ready to enter a deeper state of rest where neuronal plasticity and habit building can take place. Phase 3 is when you should essentially be in a low-lit environment, avoiding caffeine, bright light, and stress, because this is when your brain is rewiring and solidifying your patterns. All of whatever limbic friction you've been able to override in phase 1, triggering some new habits like forcing yourself to write, forcing yourself to exercise, forcing yourself to study during that high limbic friction state, and then whatever you've been doing in phase 2, which are habits that take less limbic friction to do, gets really locked into the nervous system. So if you don't follow the advice and obey the things in phase 3 like avoiding caffeine, bright light, and stress, you won't be able to develop the habits you're trying so hard to establish in phase 1 and 2 of the day. If you follow all these guidelines within a shorter period of time, hopefully within 18 or 12 or maybe even 6 days, you'll find that executing those behaviors become easier to do, as you won't have to feel much limbic friction. Now that you've learned Andrew Huberman's system for building successful habits, there is another system he talks about for improving your learning ability and memory. Check out this deep dive where I'll show you what it is and how you can make use of it to make your memory sharper than ever.